Coming up on Network Africa, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame agrees to meet with DRC's President Felix Tshisekedi over crisis in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Ethiopia's federal government and Tigray regional state begin talks in Addis Ababa to end the delays in implementing the Pretoria peace agreement. Plus, tenants narrowly escaped a devastating fire in their home in Johannesburg, South Africa. Hello and welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Layo Olarinde. Representatives from Ethiopia's federal government and the Tigray regional state have started talks in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to end the delays in implementing the Pretoria peace agreement. Now, the deal, brokered between the two parties and signed in South Africa in November 2022, aims to bring stability to the region after the conflicts between the Tigray People Liberation Front and the federal government started in November 2020. Former President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, and former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, are among the mediating team. Well, challenges in implementing the agreement have caused tensions, prompting the African Union to mediate discussions to find a resolution. The Pretoria Agreement addresses issues such as power sharing, regional autonomy, and resource control, aimed at resolving the conflict's root causes through negotiation.
Being brokered by the African Union.
The newly appointed U.S. Special Envoy to Sudan has begun a diplomatic tour of East Africa and the Gulf. Tom Perriello's trip comes weeks before the first anniversary of Sudan's civil war and shortly after the UN Security Council's call for a ceasefire during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Well, his visit will take in Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, Uganda, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, which has been widely accused of funding and arming the Sudanese paramilitary RSF. Well, the new U.S. envoy says his trip is focused on the urgent need to end the war in Sudan and also to get humanitarian access to all the Sudanese people. The country is suffering from the biggest displacement crisis in the world, and aid agencies warn it risks becoming the world's largest hunger crisis. In the meantime, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is reiterating his call for a ceasefire during this Ramadan period in Sudan. His call also is to the warring parties to halt the war, saying the fighting there must end for the sake of the Sudanese people who are facing hunger, horrors, and untold hardships.
I also renew my appeal for a Ramadan cessation of hostilities in Sudan. The fighting there must end for the sake of the Sudanese people who face hunger, horrors, and untold hardships. In Gaza, in Sudan, and beyond, it's time for peace. I call on political, religious, and community leaders everywhere to do everything in their power to make this holy period a time for empathy, action, and peace. Let's not forget that beyond Ramadan, Christians will soon celebrate Easter and Jews will celebrate Passover in April. It's time to end the terrible suffering. Now it's the time to do it, and I thank you. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, market traders and shoppers in Port Sudan are lamenting the spiraling prices and shortages fueled by the ongoing conflict in the country, as well as traditional Ramadan increases. Or locals visiting the market to purchase goods for Ramadan, as well as traders sorting through their stocks, say the prices are high and the market suffers shortages of commodities. The holy month regularly sees price increases due to supply issues, although these have been exacerbated by the ongoing fighting. The conflict in the country, which began in April 2023, has caused severe disruption to imports from neighboring countries and the supply chains, while many domestic factories have been destroyed. And the fighting continues between Sudan's armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces. Up to 15,000 people have been killed, according to UN, with over 8 million displaced. Well, as the holy month of Ramadan begins for Muslims in Niger, the citizens are grappling with skyrocketing prices, making it increasingly difficult for them to afford essential items. The transition of power has also left the country's economy in turmoil by an embargo imposed by neighboring countries that lasted nearly 8 months. Now, the lifting of the embargo just weeks before Ramadan offered a glimmer of hope, but citizens complain that the reality on ground remains dire. Basic necessities such as rice, sugar, oil and milk, essential for Ramadan observance, have become prohibitively expensive for many Nigerians. While the root of Niger's economic woes lies in the junta's struggle to supply the market with essential goods, the disruption caused by the embargo, combined with the junta's inability to effectively manage the economy, has left many Nigerians facing financial hardship.
Citizens are grappling with skyrocketing.
Well, still in Niger, the Russian diaspora have convened at designated polling stations to exercise their right to vote in the selection of candidates for the upcoming Russian presidential election. Voters in the polling station, as well as the Electoral Commission, head of the consular section of the Russian embassy in Niger with residency in Bamako, Dmitry Vlasov, have been registering voters. Mr. Vlasov says the elections have been organized with discretion, allowing individuals to cast their votes and deposit their ballot papers in the designated ballot box. Furthermore, he underscores the significance of the election within the global geopolitical landscape as a pivotal moment in the history of Russia's presidential elections. Well, voting in Russia is scheduled from March 15 to 17, 2024, even as early voting started in February. Now, reactions have been trailing the UK government's new immigration ban on international health and care workers, prohibiting them from bringing their dependents into the country on work visas. The Home Office issued a statement on Monday saying that this new plan is to slash migration levels and curb abuse of the immigration system, also noting that the new measure will deliver the biggest ever reduction in the country's net migration. Now, under plans set out by the Interior Secretary, James Cleverly, workers would also need to earn at least £38,700 to obtain a visa, up from £26,200, while care workers would be barred from bringing in dependents from next April. Well, joining us now is Toib Adelodu, a personal development coach based in London, to discuss the ban on care workers bringing in their dependents into the UK. Thank you so much for your time, Toib. From your understanding, what does this new rule mean?
It has been announced, I think towards the end of last year, by the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, that they are going to ban care workers from bringing their dependents to the UK. But what was not clear was people that are already here in the UK, let's say they are students already, master students, that they already have their dependents with them. So what was not clear was that if that master student that is already here now gets a care worker visa, what happens to the dependents that are with them already? That was not clear. They played around with the words. But yesterday it was released very clearly that if you are a master student here and you have your dependents here already, if you move into this category of care workers and senior care workers, your dependents will not be allowed to stay with you on that visa. And the most devastating thing is that if one spouse gets a sponsorship, a care sponsorship, the other spouse gets a care sponsorship, what happens to the children?
Wow.
That is the big thing that's the one that really hits really, really hard.
And well, many people might say that, it feels like Nigerians are being targeted and being punished. What do you think? Is this new legislation too harsh?
You can talk about Nigerians and our dependents. And one thing we have to look in this case is that a lot of people coming to do their masters, most of them are married. They are coming to do their masters, they are coming to do their PhD, they've got family. When you're going through an intensive course like that, you want your family around you. And it was the law. They were allowed to do that legally. And when they stopped that January this year, nobody has questioned the government. We have carried on as it is. But in this case, there is a huge demand in the healthcare sector, which a lot of people that have moved here have been filling up. So for you to say people that are coming in to look after the elderly, to look after, people here in the UK, elderly people, young children, in mental health as well. If you say people that are doing such very, very important work for your economy are not allowed to have their family with them, that is definitely too harsh. And again, we are not the highest amount of, per country. We have India in front of us, in terms of the numbers of visas issued. If you look at the data over the last 2 years, and rightly so, India has more population than Nigeria. But people that are doing such critical work, they should be able to allow to have their family with them. You can ban people from coming in. That's okay. We understand that if you want to ban people from coming in as care workers. But if they are already here and they are switching to that visa and they have got family with them, they've got young children with them, you want them to do that critical work to get into that visa space and not have their family? I think that is very harsh.
And finally, what advice, do you have for those feeling anxious right now? I mean, they had plans of traveling to the UK for work, but wanted to bring their children along with them, for obvious reasons.
There are two ways to split that advice. I think, as you rightly said, the first one is from the government side. Where can they, during their diplomatic talks, doing their talks with foreign governments, make sure that their citizens are not treated, they are treated very well. That is very, very important, because we are having cases where we come here as international students, we are paying top of the range in terms of fees, £20,000 a year, £30,000. When you will get a job, you pay the NHS fee, which is about £1,000 a year for every year you stay in the UK. So those are not, when we come here, we don't come empty-handed. We come and pay into the economy. So there is a bit where our government can, use their lever and say, look, our citizens, treat them rightly, give them every support that they need, and there are other things that they can talk about, the type of visa, so many other ways that the government can use their stand to help. And particularly now, with a lot of international students, I'm heading to Sunderland today and speaking to students as well, there is a lot of support that we can give these people that have moved here to better their life, some in terms of exchange rates, some in terms of just supporting them through all these things that are happening, with the way things are changing with laws here in the UK. And then lastly, for individuals, individuals that are trying to get sponsorship or move, one thing we must understand is that there are other areas that are not just care and senior care workers. In the health and social care visa, there are lots of job codes there that are different from these two categories. Check those categories and see if you are suitable for them. In the education area, there is demand as well. Look into that area and see where you should, because there is intensive demand here in the UK economy in some particular sectors. So look into other sectors and see where you can get what you want. But the only thing is that with the health and social care visa, you are exempted from the NHS surcharge, which is the £1,000 every year. So if you get a 5-year visa, you have to pay £5,000 as part of your application. So people try to get that care visa because at least it exempts them from that fee. But unfortunately, we are being boxed in now. We just have to make available, use the available options. And then there is also the new entrant category. If you are just graduating, look into that category, look into the things that are there and see if that is good for you.
All right then. Thank you so much, Toyib Adelodun, a personal development coach based in London. We have more stories for you on Network Africa, including it's free water and electricity for households in Chad until the end of the year, announced by the government. More details after the break. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program. Rwanda's President Paul Kagame has agreed to meet with his Democratic Republic of Congo's counterpart, Felix Tshisekedi. And this is to discuss the ongoing crisis in the eastern region of DRC. According to the African Union's mediator, that's the Angolan government, the agreement follows a meeting in Luanda between Mr. Kagame and Angolan President João Lourenço. However, a set date is yet to be picked for the meeting. Well, Rwanda and the DRC will be holding the meeting with ministerial delegations from both sides working toward the plan. President Kagame's trip to Angola follows a similar visit by Mr. Tshisekedi to Luanda in February, during which it was announced that the DR Congo leader had agreed to meet with his Rwandan counterpart. We're in southern Africa now, where a tragic incident in Johannesburg has left tenants who narrowly escaped a devastating fire that engulfed their home, allegedly sparked by cigarettes and tires. The blaze left residents like 36-year-old Precious Mputi with the only clothes on her back. Well, fortunately, there were no injuries reported, but the fire ravaged the house, destroying all belongings, including electrical appliances and furniture. Despite efforts from concerned neighbors to douse the flames, the fire left the tenants homeless. The cause of the fire remains under investigation.
We received the fire via the public that called our control center, or our watch room as we call it. They gave the address through and we got dispatched immediately at 0907. We do not know the cause of the fire. We do not determine any cause of the fire. We're operational staff. All that we do is we just extinguish the fire, and that the cause of the fire will be determined on a later stage. It was not difficult at all. I stopped, I did an overall assessment of the scene, deployed hose lines and firemen wherever was needed, and it was not long and we had the fire under control.
Were there any injuries?
No injuries reported. All public members are safe. We evacuated them safely and no injuries.
The caretaker wanted to build a shack behind, and there's more than 100 tires there behind. So whilst he was smoking, and the other Musutu guy who was helping him to build a shack out of cardboards, they mistakenly threw the cigarettes there by the boxes next to the tires. So the tires caught fire, and then the whole house was on fire.
Meanwhile, authorities in South Africa's commercial hub have blamed the ongoing heat wave for the lack of water in some parts of the city for several weeks. The South African Weather Service issued a warning over excessively high temperatures, with the peak expected on Wednesday. The Public Water Services provider says increased water consumption and lower reservoir levels are also fueling the city's ongoing water crisis. The company adds that its bulk supplier, Rand Water, will reconfigure its systems to be able to boost supplies. Well, water shortages are common in Johannesburg and have triggered protests in the past. The current water crisis began late last year but has worsened in recent weeks. In Mozambique, 4 people have died and 3 others wounded after being struck by lightning. The lightning strikes happened in the northern town of Monkwal in Nampula province. Meanwhile, Tropical Storm Filippo has made landfall in the Inhambane province, reports say, as it continues to move southwestwards across southern Mozambique. The winds will quickly weaken, so the system will get downgraded to a tropical depression over the coming hours. According to Mozambique's National Institute for Disaster Risk Management and Reduction, over 500,000 people could be affected by strong winds and flooding. There will also be some heavy downpours in Eswatini and the northeastern areas of South Africa. But the storm Filippo is expected to spin out to the sea by Wednesday. Boats and vessels are being warned by the authorities to take precautions. Now, natural disasters are common in Mozambique, particularly during the raining and cyclone season, which runs between October and April. It appears Botswana has taken the lead in rallying support from Southern African Development Community countries to challenge Europe's proposed ban on the import of wildlife trophies. Now, this united front highlights the role of trophy hunting in conservation and local economies across the region. The bill, introduced in the UK Parliament in 2022, aims to outlaw the import of hunting trophies into the United Kingdom. Our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Semosa, reports from Botswana.
Botswana, alongside nations such as Zimbabwe, South Africa, Namibia and Zambia, is voicing strong opposition to European efforts to prohibit the importation of wildlife trophies. These countries argue that the ban could severely impact their wildlife management strategies.
There's a ton of academic evidence out there that is readily available and has been given to them that has been ignored. Totally. So yes, I think the private members bill as it stands now is misinformed. It's unfit for purpose, and it lacks the basic foundations of any consultation.
What we have recognized in science is that government protected areas are nowhere near big enough to effectively conserve African wildlife. We need these wildlife management areas around these protected areas and these community areas and community conservancies and things. And so the future of conservation is actually, what the West doesn't realize, is through community conservation, because it's the communities. If we can effectively develop community conservation, we're effectively increasing the area through which wildlife can benefit and move and the habitats available for wildlife.
Some say the proposed European ban highlights a complex interplay between conservation efforts and economic realities in southern Africa.
The challenge we have is there's a lot of misunderstanding around hunting and sustainable use and how it contributes to people's livelihoods, how it mitigates conflict, and how it benefits conservation. I think you heard earlier today, there's a lot of misconception about hunting. Hunting and poaching is apparently the same, which is completely different. One is legal, one is illegal, one is controlled, one is indiscriminate.
Community members say the ban will have a knock-on effect on the local economy.
Banning hunting, truly speaking, is going to kill us, because we are depending much on this thing. And the livelihood of the people of our area have changed a lot. So there will be no life anymore.
The debate continues as both sides weigh the ethical, ecological and economic ramifications of trophy hunting and its regulations on the international scale. From Maung, Botswana, Innocent Semosa, Channels Television News.
Now, the Kenyan government has vowed to go on with the deployment of hundreds of police officers to Haiti, despite the escalating gang violence in the Caribbean country. Kenya's Interior Minister Kithure Kindiki says the mission to send about 1,000 police officers to Haiti is in the pre-deployment stage, and that laws and enforcement measures like detention and arrests have been finalized. The minister adds that the Kenyan government has also addressed all issues raised in court that had blocked the deployment. However, the exact date on which the officers will leave the country remains unknown. Chad's government has announced that it would provide free water and electricity for households until the end of the year. The monthly household consumption payable by the government is capped at 15,000 litres of water and 300 kilowatt-hour of electricity. But the government says it would also clear water and electricity bills for residents with outstanding arrears, a cut in transport taxes that could lower transport costs, which hiked last month with a rise in fuel prices. Well, some Chadians perceive the move by President Derby as an attempt to endear voters as he is vying for the presidency when elections hold between May and June. Some residents also say that the move is meaningless, and several parts of the capital in N'Djamena have faced a power outage for the past 2 weeks. However, others have welcomed the measure as a much-needed relief to the ongoing cost of living crisis. And finally, on the program, at the Oscars ceremony over the weekend, prominent Ugandan opposition leader Bobi Wine missed out on winning an award. Although his documentary may have missed out on the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature Film, there was no shortage of glamour from him on the red carpet. Well, the Ugandan politician, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, paired his trademark red beret with a suit that featured embroidered edging. His wife was beside him, Barbie, wearing a dress embellished with tassels and beadwork. Bobi Wine, the People's President, the documentary was directed by fellow Ugandan Moses Bwayo, and it lost to 20 Days in Mariupol in the Best Documentary Feature category. His film tells the story of Wine, who rose to fame in his country, Uganda, as a musician and whose popularity led him to enter a career in politics. And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.